नमस्ते बिटिया। हमेशा खुश रहो बिटिया। Myself JVN Dr. Astha Sikarwar, Assistant Professor, Department of Organ of Medicine, Faculty of Homeopathic Science, Jyoti Vidyapeeth Women's University, Jaipur. Today's topic is oversensitive patients from JT Kent Philosophy. As per Organon aphorism number 44, drug poisoning such as we referred to in last lecture is not always due to the prescribing of crude drugs. If you work long among sensitive patients, you will become across those who have been actually poisoned by the inappropriate administration of potentized medicine. These are oversensitive patients who have received repeated doses of medicine after the medicine and dose that was homeopathic to their condition was administered. If a drug that is really homeopathic to the case is continued after enough has been given to cure, a miasm is established in some cases by that drug, and this miasm imitates one of the chronic diseases or one of the acute miasms in accordance with its ability. The symptoms of the drug crop out periodically years after it has been abused, and the periodical attacks are perfectly typical of the drug. The mineral substances which are perfectly harmless on the crude plan may be poisonous on the dynamic plan when the patient is oversensitive. There are instances when such a patient is truly homeopathic to a remedy, and if that remedy be repeated after enough has been given to cure it, seizes its homeopathic relation and acting through the general susceptibility creates a miasm upon this extremely sensitive patient. When a patient is hypersensitive, you must avoid the use of the CM and other very high potencies which will make your patient sick and use instead of 30th and 200th. In cases where the remedy is indicated, such potencies will work quite quickly. As per Organon aphorism number 49, we should have been able to meet with many more real natural homeopathic cures of this kind if, on the one hand, the attention of observers had been more directed to them, and on the other hand, if nature had not been so deficient in helpful homeopathic diseases. Dr. Hahnemann, as said in aphorism number 46, gives examples of these natural cures. We occasionally meet with these cures now. The Mayas can cure all similar diseases and the curing substance are in attenuated form. The evils that rise from these swamps are similar to the evils of the economy of the patient, and that similitude is antidotal, is curative, and causes change back into order in accordance with the eternal law that governs the action of similars. There was a time in the early days of homeopathy when, taking into view the great array of disease forms to be contended with and the very few medicines then at his own command, the homeopath was worried to find remedies similar to all those of his cases. That cannot be true now. If the homeopath will work in a systematic way, he will be able to command enough of the materia medica to meet all the diseases that he comes in contact with, the symptoms of which are sufficiently observed. Every man should put himself to the task of studying the materia medica. He has no time to lose, no time to fool away. The physician can really have no excuse at the present day to leave our proved medicines, the medicines that are recorded in our books. He can have no reasonable excuse for stepping aside into ways that are dark, treacherous, and recommended only by tradition. Such physicians hold that it is liberal to do anything for a patient. This is a pity for a rock that will destroy any physician that will not avoid it. We know that there are doctors who claim to be homeopaths who attempt to justify upon some ground or other the administration of remedies merely to palliate and relieve suffering. With such men, there must be a lack of steadiness in listening to the sufferings of a patient. It seemed to me that no one who is honest and who was knowledge of the stupidity that comes after the administration of a medicine that will cause the symptoms to disappear will actually tie his hands against the finding of a remedy that will be suitable to cure. As surely as the voice of the symptoms is hushed, so surely does the physician put out of his way the opportunity for selecting a homeopathic remedy. When the index to the remedy is spoiled, the ability of the physician to benefit his patient is destroyed. If you give quinine, go on with it. If you give a opiate, to go on with it. Don't go back to homeopathy. The man who does these things is a homeopathy failure. So men are incapable of grasping the homeopathic doctrines and fall in mongrels, which is a cross between homeopathy and allopathy. I would prefer an allopath to one who performs to be a homeopath, but who does not know enough homeopathy to practice it. Why should you put crude medicines upon the diphtheritic membrane in addition to give your remedy? If the crude drugs do anything, they will spoil the appearance of the throat and you will not be able to know that what your remedy has done. If these adjuvants to the remedy do anything at all, they will effect such changes as will damage the case. If they don't effect changes, why use them? There can be no reason for administering something that does not affect changes. After you prescribe a remedy, sorry, you want to know when you come back whether that remedy has done anything. For this reason, you must rest your case upon that which you believe to be the nearest homeopathic remedy. All changes must be watched because by observing changes, we know what next to do. If something has been given by the patient's friends and changes have occurred in the case from such meddling, the doctor is in confusion. If absolutely no changes have occurred after his remedy, then he is intelligent and knows what next to do. He knows he is damaging his patient. He has put out of his hands the ability to cure that patient homeopathically. If a doctor has not the grit to withstand the cries of the family, the criticisms of the friends, the threatening of his pocketbook and of his bread and butter, he will not practice homeopathy very long. The harangue of the crazy old women who stand around weighing their tattling tongues. What has that to do with the life of the patient or the duty of the physician? In both instances, the doctor gets the worst of it. The doctor who violates the law also violates his conscience, and his death is worse than the death of the patient. Generally, the physician who has knowledge enough and grit enough to wait will see before the patient dies the homeopathic remedy that will control the case. The whole community is sometimes turned into excitement because a doctor will not do this or that. The physician who will stick by the patient and let the pupil hall is one that will be trusted through any and every orderly. But the doctor that will flinch and tremble at every threatening is one that will violate his conscience, is one that can be bought, can be hired to do anything, and will abandon his color in time of emergency. It is hard work for a homeopathic physician to settle off alone by himself where he has nobody that will stand by him in his turbulence. The attitude of the public must never furnish the physician with indication as to what he shall do. Let him study the patient and the symptoms of the patient. That which is right is protected and supported, and that which is wrong degrades. Let a man lose his self respect a few times, and he becomes a coward and a snake, and is ready to do almost anything that is vicious and cowardly. The physician who has done rightly by his patient can look the friends squarely in the face when the patient has died. If he administered morphine to the patient and turned aside all the symptoms upon which he could find the remedy, it does not seem to me that he can look the friends squarely in the face. Of course, if you act according to principles in this way, you suffer for it. In the 63rd and 64th paragraphs, Hahnemann treats of the primary and secondary actions of the medicine. There is no necessity for dwelling upon this subject, the primary and secondary actions of the medicines. There is no necessity for dwelling upon this subject. So, homeopaths have attempted to individualize between the primary and secondary action. It does not matter what the patient is suffering from substances which appeared in the primary action or from substances which appeared in the secondary action. The drug will cure just the same. The symptoms that arise are the symptoms that arise from the remedy, and they often seem to oppose each other. There are constitutional states in patients by virtue of which they are always affected in a certain way, and these states are often left after provings or are found in those who have been poisoned by a drug. All these patients will have alternating symptoms which will confuse the physician before he knows their constitutional state. It is an important thing to know the constitutional state of a patient before prescribing. You will always be able to do better for your patients when you know all of their tendencies. Of course, in acute diseases, symptoms sometimes stand out so sharply that an acute remedy can be administered without reference to any constitutional state. Acute cognates can be established in almost any patient. For instance, the calcarea patient will need an acute cognate of calcarea when he is sick with acute symptoms. The acute symptoms fit into and are established and formed by the constitutional state of the patient. This session powered by digital version 2.0 Jyoti Vidyapeeth Women's University. I hope you are satisfied with my digital session. If you have any query, please mention it in comment box. I will resolve it. Thank you.